In the searing heat of the Arabian desert, a new power was rising. The year was 632 CE, and the Prophet Muhammad had just passed away, leaving behind a unified Arabian peninsula under the banner of Islam. What followed would become one of history's most remarkable military expansions, forever altering the map of the medieval world. The death of Muhammad created an immediate crisis of succession. Who would lead this fledgling community? The solution came in the form of Abu Bakr, Muhammad's father-in-law and close companion, who was appointed as the first caliph, the successor to the Prophet. But Abu Bakr inherited a precarious situation. Several Arabian tribes, believing their allegiance had been to Muhammad personally rather than to Islam itself, began to rebel and renounce their faith. This movement, known as the Ridda Wars or the Wars of Apostasy, posed an existential threat to the nascent Islamic State. It was in this crucible of conflict that a military genius emerged, a man whose tactical brilliance would soon echo across battlefields from Mesopotamia to the Levant. His name was Khalid ibn al-Walid. Once an opponent of Muhammad, Khalid had converted to Islam and quickly established himself as an exceptional military commander. When Abu Bakr needed someone to quell the rebellions threatening to tear apart the young Muslim community, he turned to Khalid. "Go forth, Khalid," Abu Bakr is recorded as saying, "and fight all who reject Islam with the armies at your command." Khalid's response was swift and decisive. Leading a relatively small but highly mobile force, he systematically defeated the rebel tribes one by one. His trademark was speed and surprise, striking where enemies least expected, maneuvering through harsh terrain others thought impassable, and inspiring unshakable loyalty among his men. Within a year, the Arabian Peninsula was once again unified under the banner of Islam, but this was merely the prelude to what would become an unprecedented expansion. With Arabia secure, Abu Bakr faced a strategic decision. To the north lay two of the ancient world's greatest empires, Byzantine Rome in the west and Sassanid Persia in the east. Both were weakened by decades of warfare against each other, yet each still commanded vast resources and armies that dwarfed anything the Arabs could muster. The conventional wisdom would have counseled caution. The Muslims were outnumbered and outmatched in terms of equipment and experience in large-scale warfare. But Abu Bakr made a bold choice that would alter the course of history. Rather than remaining content with controlling Arabia, he directed his forces northward against both empires simultaneously. "We have nothing to lose," he reportedly told his commanders. "If we succeed, we bring Islam to new lands. If we fail, we attain martyrdom." As Muslim armies prepared to march against these mighty adversaries, few could have predicted that within a decade, both empires would be driven back, and within a century, one would be completely conquered while the other permanently diminished. The stage was set for a monumental clash of civilizations that would reshape the world for centuries to come. As Muslim forces advanced beyond Arabia's borders in 633 CE, they confronted the Byzantine and Sassanid empires, ancient powers that controlled the most fertile and wealthy regions of the Near East. The Byzantines ruled Syria, Palestine, and Egypt, while the Sassanids dominated Mesopotamia and Persia. Both viewed the approaching Arab forces with a mixture of contempt and disbelief. Khalid ibn al-Walid, now operating in the theater of international warfare, faced professional armies with centuries of military tradition. His first major objective was the conquest of Iraq, then under Sassanid control. The Persian commanders, accustomed to fighting the disciplined Byzantine forces, underestimated these desert warriors. At the Battle of Chains in 633, the Persians employed an unusual tactic. Soldiers chained themselves together to prevent retreat. This backfired catastrophically when Khalid's mobile cavalry units outflanked them. Unable to maneuver, the Persian ranks collapsed into chaos. As one Arab chronicler recorded, "They had bound themselves to death with their own hands." Khalid's genius lay in adapting traditional Arab raiding tactics for large-scale warfare. His highly mobile cavalry could strike suddenly, withdraw rapidly, and exhaust enemies in the punishing desert heat. The Muslim forces traveled light, carrying minimal provisions and living off the land, a stark contrast to the heavily equipped imperial armies. After several decisive victories in Iraq, Khalid received urgent orders from Caliph Abu Bakr. The Byzantine campaign in Syria was faltering, and Muslim commanders there requested reinforcements. Abu Bakr's message was clear: leave half your forces in Iraq and take the rest to Syria. What followed was one of history's most audacious military maneuvers. Rather than taking the conventional northern route through fertile lands, Khalid chose to cross the Syrian desert, a harsh, waterless expanse considered impassable for large forces. Byzantine scouts monitored the northern roads but saw nothing. Khalid's desert crossing was meticulously planned. Water was stored in the stomachs of camels, which could later be slaughtered in emergencies to provide both food and water. The journey was timed using the stars, with guides who knew the locations of rare desert oases. After 5 grueling days, his army emerged on Syria's borders, appearing seemingly from nowhere to the astonishment of both allies and enemies. A Byzantine commander reportedly exclaimed upon hearing the news, "These men must either be mad or have wings." When Abu Bakr died in 634, his successor Umar ibn al-Khattab became caliph. Umar immediately recognized the strategic importance of Syria and ordered all Muslim forces in the region to unite under a single command. However, in a surprising move, he removed Khalid from overall leadership, appointing Abu Ubaidah as the new commander while keeping Khalid as a field general. This decision reflected the complex politics within the early Islamic State. Umar worried that Muslims might attribute their victories to Khalid's genius rather than divine favor. As he explained, "I did not dismiss Khalid because of my anger or because of any dishonesty on his part, but because I feared that people would become too attached to him and thereby put their trust in him instead of God." Despite this demotion, Khalid accepted his new role without complaint, demonstrating the discipline and unity of purpose that characterized the early Muslim armies. "I fight for Islam, not for men," he is recorded as saying. "I serve under any commander appointed by the Caliph." As Roman Emperor Heraclius watched these developments with growing alarm, he prepared a massive counteroffensive that would lead to one of the most consequential battles in history, a confrontation that would determine the fate of the Byzantine East. By early 636, Byzantine Emperor Heraclius had assembled a massive force to expel the Muslim armies from Syria. His strategy was sound, a single, overwhelming campaign with numerical superiority, unlike anything the Arabs had faced. Contemporary sources suggest the Byzantine army numbered between 80,000 and 150,000 troops, including Armenian, Slavic, and Ghassanid Arab auxiliaries, all under the command of the emperor's brother, Theodore. The Muslim forces, led by Abu Ubaidah with Khalid ibn al-Walid as his field commander, totaled approximately 40,000 men. Recognizing their disadvantage, they withdrew from northern Syria to the Yarmouk River Valley, a tactical retreat that would prove decisive. The terrain at Yarmouk offered critical advantages. Steep ravines and gorges flanked the battlefield, narrowing the front and negating Byzantine numerical superiority. The scorching August heat favored the desert-acclimated Arabs over the heavily armored Byzantine soldiers. Most importantly, the Muslims positioned themselves between the Byzantine army and its water supply, a strategic choice that would have devastating consequences. As the armies faced each other across the dusty plain, a sandstorm erupted, a phenomenon the Arabs were accustomed to, but which disoriented the Byzantine troops. Muslim chroniclers would later write that the storm was divine intervention, blowing dust into the eyes of their enemies while clearing their own vision. The battle began with traditional Byzantine tactics, a heavy infantry advance supported by archers and cavalry on the flanks. Initially, the Muslim center fell back under the weight of this assault. At this critical moment, Khalid implemented an innovative response that would change the course of military history. Instead of committing his reserves to shore up the faltering center, Khalid organized a mobile guard of elite cavalry, a force of 4,000 veterans drawn from various tribal contingents. This mobile reserve could rapidly reinforce threatened sectors and exploit any opportunities that emerged on the battlefield. A Muslim soldier later recounted, "When we thought a position would collapse, Khalid's horsemen would appear as if from the dust itself, strike like thunder, and vanish again to another part of the field." The battle raged for 6 days. Byzantine soldiers, encumbered by heavy armor, began to succumb to heat exhaustion and thirst. Their supply lines were stretched, and the Muslim cavalry repeatedly disrupted attempts to reach water sources. By the 6th day, discipline in the Byzantine ranks was breaking down. Seizing this moment, Khalid unleashed his mobile guard in a sweeping maneuver that enveloped the Byzantine right flank. Simultaneously, the Muslim infantry launched a coordinated offensive across the entire front. As panic spread through Byzantine lines, their organized retreat deteriorated into a chaotic rout. Thousands of Byzantine soldiers were driven into the ravines, where they plunged to their deaths. Emperor Heraclius, receiving news of the catastrophe at his headquarters in Antioch, reportedly exclaimed, "Farewell, Syria!" He understood immediately that this defeat marked the end of Byzantine dominance in the region. The Battle of Yarmouk stands as one of history's most decisive engagements. With a single victory, the Muslims had broken Byzantine power in Syria and opened the path to conquering the entire Levant. Jerusalem would fall the following year, and within a decade, Egypt, Rome's richest province, would come under Muslim control. For Khalid ibn al-Walid, however, Yarmouk would be his last major battle. Shortly after this triumph, Caliph Umar removed him from command completely, concerned that Muslims might attribute divine victories to human leadership. The man known as the Sword of Allah accepted this final demotion with characteristic stoicism, retiring to Medina where he would live out his days in relative obscurity. As Khalid faded from the battlefield, another momentous confrontation was brewing on the Eastern Front, one that would seal the fate of the mighty Sassanid Empire. While the Byzantine Empire reeled from its defeat at Yarmouk, the Sassanid Persians faced an equally existential threat. By 636 CE, Muslim armies under Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, a companion of the Prophet Muhammad, had penetrated deep into Mesopotamia. The Persian Emperor Yazdegerd III, the last ruler of a dynasty that had governed Iran for 4 centuries, assembled a formidable force to meet this challenge. The armies converged near the town of al-Qadisiyyah, alongside the banks of the Euphrates River. The Persian force, led by the veteran general Rustam, outnumbered the Muslims by at least 2 to 1. Their army included heavily armored cavalry, the elite Immortals Infantry Corps, and war elephants, massive creatures unknown to the Arabs and designed to break enemy formations through sheer terror. Before the battle, Sa'ad developed a severe illness that prevented him from leading from horseback. Adapting to this limitation, he established his command post atop a nearby castle, directing operations through a system of messengers, perhaps the first documented instance of a general commanding remotely in real time. On the eve of battle, Sa'd sent an embassy to Rustam with a simple message that encapsulated the Muslims' confidence. "We offer you three choices: embrace Islam, pay tribute, or face our swords." Rustam reportedly laughed at this ultimatum, asking, "And who will rule Persia if we surrender?" The Muslim envoy's reply was uncompromising: "Those to whom God gives it. Your time has passed." The Battle of al-Qadisiyyah began at dawn with a dramatic Persian advance. Their war elephants charged forward, causing immediate panic among Arab troops and horses unaccustomed to these massive beasts. The Muslim front line broke as men and mounts fled in terror. A Persian chronicler recorded, "The Arabs scattered before our elephants like desert rodents before a hunting cat." Sa'd, observing from his elevated position, quickly identified the threat. He dispatched orders for archers to target the elephants' eyes and trunks, while the most daring warriors were instructed to strike at the legs of the beasts and cut the straps holding their howdahs. This coordinated response gradually neutralized the elephant advantage. The battle continued for 3 days, with neither side gaining a decisive edge. On the third night, a contingent of Muslim soldiers who had fought alongside Persians against Byzantines offered critical intelligence. The elephants feared noise. By dawn, Sa'd ordered drums beaten and camels draped with bells to create a cacophony that drove the remaining elephants into panic. The final day of battle, known as the Day of Distress, saw the Muslim cavalry execute a brilliant flanking maneuver that enveloped Rustam's command position. In the ensuing chaos, the Persian general attempted to flee, but was cornered at a water channel. According to Muslim accounts, Rustam was killed by Hilal ibn Ulafa, who proudly carried the general's severed head back to Muslim lines. The Persian army, leaderless and exhausted, collapsed. As they retreated across the Euphrates, thousands drowned in the river's swift currents. The survivors brought news of the disaster to Emperor Yazdegerd, who supposedly responded by throwing dirt on his own head, a Persian gesture of extreme grief. Al-Qadisiyyah shattered Sassanid military power. Within 2 years, the Muslim armies captured Ctesiphon, the Persian capital. Yazdegerd fled eastward, a ruler without a realm, eventually meeting his end as a fugitive in a distant mill near Merv in 651. A Persian nobleman, witnessing the fall of Ctesiphon, reportedly asked a Muslim commander, "Who are you people who have accomplished what Alexander the Great could not?" The commander's reply was simple: "We are not conquerors of land. We are liberators of souls." The Muslim victory opened all of Iran to Islamic influence. Unlike the Byzantine territories, where Christianity remained dominant, Persia would gradually adopt Islam as its predominant faith, creating a new Persian Islamic civilization that would shape the region's culture for centuries to come. By 642 CE, just a decade after Muhammad's death, the Muslim armies had achieved what seemed impossible. 2 ancient empires lay broken, the Sassanids effectively destroyed and the Byzantines driven from their richest provinces. The rapid Islamic expansion continued under Caliph Umar's strategic direction, advancing across North Africa and deeper into Central Asia. This remarkable success raises a pivotal question. How did the Arabs, emerging from the desert with comparatively limited resources, overcome such formidable adversaries so quickly? Several factors converged to create this perfect storm of conquest. First was timing. Both the Byzantine and Sassanid empires had exhausted themselves through decades of warfare against each other. The devastating Byzantine-Sassanid War of 602 to 628 had left both powers militarily and economically drained. Emperor Heraclius had actually achieved a stunning victory over the Persians just before the Muslim emergence, recovering territories and the True Cross from Jerusalem. But this triumph was Pyrrhic. His armies were depleted, his treasury empty, and his eastern provinces restive under religious persecution and heavy taxation. The Sassanid situation was even worse. Their defeat by Heraclius had triggered internal political chaos, with 9 different rulers claiming the throne in just 4 years before Yazdegerd III's ascension. This instability crippled Persian military response at the critical moment of Muslim advance. Beyond timing, the Muslim armies possessed significant advantages that contemporary chroniclers often overlooked. Though smaller than their imperial counterparts, Arab forces were extraordinarily mobile. Their cavalry could cover vast distances rapidly, allowing them to concentrate forces where needed and disperse when threatened. A Byzantine officer captured after Yarmouk observed, "We face an enemy who loves death as we love life." This philosophical difference manifested in practical military terms. Muslim warriors, motivated by both religious conviction and the promise of wealth through conquest, fought with remarkable determination. Many genuinely believed that martyrdom in battle guaranteed paradise, removing the fear that typically limits soldiers' commitment. Their organizational structure also proved superior for the campaigns they undertook. While Byzantine and Persian armies maintained rigid hierarchies, Muslim forces operated with greater tactical flexibility. Field commanders had significant autonomy to adapt to changing circumstances, creating a more responsive military machine. Equally important was the Arabs' political strategy. Contrary to popular misconceptions, forced conversion was rare during these early conquests. Instead, non-Muslim populations were generally offered protection in exchange for tribute payments known as jizya. This pragmatic approach minimized resistance and preserved economic productivity in conquered regions. In many areas, particularly Syria and Egypt, local populations welcomed the Muslims as liberators from Byzantine religious persecution. The Coptic Christians of Egypt and various Christian sects deemed heretical by Constantinople often preferred Muslim rule, which allowed them religious autonomy denied under Byzantine orthodoxy. A Coptic bishop reportedly told his congregation after the Muslim conquest, "The Byzantines gave us churches but took our faith. The Arabs take our money but leave our faith untouched." In conquered Persian territories, the Muslims maintained much of the existing administrative structure, merely replacing the top leadership while retaining local Persian officials. This preserved governmental continuity and efficiently integrated new territories into the expanding caliphate. Perhaps most significant was the unifying power of Islam itself. The Arabs, previously divided into competing tribes with blood feuds stretching back generations, now found themselves bound by a common faith and purpose. Tribal identities remained important, but primary allegiance shifted to the broader Muslim community, the Ummah, enabling unprecedented cooperation among formerly antagonistic groups. As one Arab commander explained to a captured Persian general, "Yesterday, we fought each other over a camel. Today, we fight together for God." By 644, when Caliph Umar was assassinated by a Persian slave, the foundations of an empire stretching from Libya to the borders of India had been firmly established. What began as tribal raids had, in just 12 years, evolved into one of history's most consequential imperial projects. The legacies of the early Muslim conquests echo through history to the present day. The campaigns led by Khalid ibn al-Walid and other commanders fundamentally reshaped the political, cultural, and religious landscape of the Middle East, North Africa, and beyond. In military terms, the Arab conquest demonstrated that superior strategy, mobility, and morale could overcome material disadvantages. The campaigns of this period are still studied in military academies worldwide. Khalid's desert crossing before Yarmouk and Sa'ad's adaptive tactics at al-Qadisiyyah exemplify the principles of surprise and flexibility that remain central to modern warfare. The Rashidun Caliphate that emerged from these conquests, named for the rightly guided caliphs Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, established governance patterns that would influence Islamic political thought for centuries. Their relatively consultative approach, with leaders selected based on consensus rather than heredity, provided an early model of leadership transition that contrasted with the divine right monarchies of their contemporaries. Caliph Umar, in particular, implemented administrative innovations that proved remarkably durable. His establishment of the Diwan, a registry of Muslims entitled to state stipends, created one of history's first comprehensive public welfare systems. His policy of leaving conquered peoples' administrative structures largely intact allowed for efficient governance of vast territories with minimal disruption. For the conquered regions, the consequences were profound and varied. Persia experienced the most dramatic transformation, eventually adopting Islam as its predominant faith while retaining its distinct cultural identity. This synthesis produced a Persian Islamic civilization that would later flourish during the Abbasid Caliphate, preserving and expanding upon ancient Persian traditions of art, architecture, and scholarship. In the former Byzantine territories, the changes were initially less dramatic. Christian and Jewish communities continued under the dhimmi system, which granted protection and religious autonomy in exchange for special taxation and certain social restrictions. Over centuries, however, gradual conversion and cultural assimilation would transform regions like Syria and Egypt into predominantly Islamic societies. The conquest narratives themselves became foundational to Islamic historical consciousness. Stories of the companions' bravery, strategic brilliance, and piety established archetypes of ideal Muslim leadership. These accounts, preserved and elaborated in works like al-Tabari's monumental History of Prophets and Kings, shaped how subsequent generations understood their religious and political heritage. Perhaps most significantly, the early conquests established a vast connected realm where people, goods, and ideas could circulate with unprecedented freedom. From Spain to Central Asia, scholars, merchants, and travelers moved through lands united by a common religious vocabulary and increasingly shared cultural references. This continuity created fertile ground for the intellectual efflorescence that would characterize medieval Islamic civilization. As the dust settled on these remarkable campaigns, the victorious Muslims faced a new challenge more complex than conquest: governance. The transition from tribal raiders to imperial administrators demanded new skills and institutions. Internal tensions, suppressed during the exhilarating period of expansion, would resurface dramatically with Caliph Uthman's assassination in 656, plunging the young caliphate into its first civil war. Yet, despite these later conflicts, the achievement remains astonishing. In just 2 decades, a new religious community had emerged from the Arabian Peninsula to defeat 2 ancient empires and establish a political entity that would endure in various forms for over a millennium. The Byzantine Emperor Heraclius, watching Muslim armies advance across his former territories, is said to have remarked prophetically, "This is a new faith carried by a people of iron. No power can stop them until they exhaust themselves through their own divisions." His words proved prescient. The early Muslim conquests represent one of history's most remarkable military achievements, a testament to what can be accomplished when revolutionary ideology, exceptional leadership, and historical opportunity converge.